Hello everybody and welcome to August's crochet series. My name is Marianne and I'm so excited to get crocheting with you all. August's project is baskets, so I have a very simple basket pattern that I adapted from ChristinaCodesign.com called All the Nesting Baskets. So here's an example of a finished basket. So it's only about 4 inches diameter and 3 inches tall, so pretty small, but it is a pattern that's really easy to customize. You can make it taller, you can make it shorter, and you can also make it larger or smaller, which is why I chose this pattern, because it's really easy for you to customize and really make it to fit all of your basket needs. So I've got my pattern here, I've got my scissors, I've got a stitch marker, I've got my acrylic yarn, and today I'm going to make a blue basket, and then I am using a size G hook. This one is 4.5 millimeters, but 4.0 and 4.25 millimeters are also considered G and work as well. As always, feel free to use a larger or smaller hook depending on your personal gauge, whatever is most comfortable for you. Move my pattern out of the way here, and I'm going to start with slip knot and put that on my hook. And you have two options here to create a circle. So we're crocheting in the round for this project, so you can either create a magic ring and create your circle that way, or you can do the chain 2. I'm going to do chain 2. So 2 chain stitches, and then we are going to single crochet 6 stitches into the second chain from hook. And when it's the second chain from hook, let me fix my focus here. So this is the first one from hook because it's closest to the hook. The second one from the hook is the furthest from the hook. So I'm going into that stitch. That is 1 single crochet, and you'll see there's no other chain that I can go into at this point, so I'm going to keep going back into that same stitch. This is how we create a circle, and you'll see as you're doing your stitches it kind of naturally starts to form a circle. Now we have a circle of 6 stitches. They look the same as when you're crocheting back and forth. It's still going to be those little V shapes that are your stitches. So I have 6 of them, and since we started with 6, it means every time that we are increasing by multiples of 6. Just fix the lighting on my camera here real quick, because the light yarn is kind of hard to see if the brightness is too much. There we go. Alright, so that was row 1. So row 2, we are going to single crochet 2 stitches in each stitch around. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to do a regular single crochet, go back into that same stitch, and do another one. And at this point, this is where if you wanted to use stitch marker, you would put it in the first stitch of that row. So I did 2 single crochet into 1 stitch. That's the first stitch I did, and that way when I come back, once I hit that stitch marker, I know it's time to start row 3. So 2 single crochet in that stitch, 2 in that stitch, alright, so you see my circle has grown. I came back around and my stitch marker is in this stitch. And just to make sure, I'm going to count my stitches. So we're going by multiples of 6, So I should have added another 6 stitches this round, which means I should have a total of 12. So I'm going to count from, so I have 12, and you'll see this inner kind of circle is row 1, and then the outer one is row 2, and we are just going to keep adding stitches. So the reason we have to increase is because if you don't increase your circle, it wouldn't continue expanding, it would just start going straight up. And if we add too much, it would start to curl. So that's why we follow this pattern of only increasing 6 stitches per row. It's kind of a gradual increase to create the base of our basket. So this is where we're crocheting right now, is that base of our basket. And this is where, and I list this on the second page of the pattern, this is where you have the option to customize. So once your circle is as big as you want the base of your basket to be, that is when you can stop increasing and skip to where row 9 starts, which is where the walls of your basket begin. So I'm going to take out my stitch marker here. And the next thing we're doing is row 3, we are single crocheting regular stitch in 1 stitch. So 1 regular stitch, and then in the next stitch we are increasing. And we are going to continue that. So 1 regular single crochet, go into the next stitch, and then instead of going into the next one, I'm going into that same stitch again to increase. I did not put my stitch marker back in. If it is easier for you, it is much easier if you have that visual cue that you've, gone a whole row around. But let me show you another way. If you don't have a stitch marker, and it doesn't have to be a formal stitch marker, you can use a paper clip, you can use another piece of yarn, anything to mark your stitches. But what I do is, if you look in your center circle here, you'll see there's one part where a second row starts. So I started here and it goes around. There's this part right here where the second round begins. That is how I keep track of my rows. I know once I've hit this point, I'm at the beginning of the row, and then I always just count my stitches. So at the end of row 3, we're supposed to have 18, and I have 18. So that's how I know I'm done with row 3. Again, stitch marker is a little bit of a faster way to track that, so it's really whatever makes the most sense to you, whatever is the most comfortable for you, whatever your favorite way to track your rounds is. Alright, so now we are on row 4. We are 2 regular single crochet, and then an increase. So single crocheting 2 in the 3rd stitch. So 1, 2 regular single crochet, and then single crochet 2 into 1 stitch for an increase. And then I see I'm getting back to that part in my circle where I can tell this is around where my row ends. So I'm going to finish this increase. We're supposed to end with 24 stitches. I have 24 stitches. If you're not noticing the pattern here, we're basically single crocheting an extra regular stitch every row. So we just did single crochet in 2 stitches. Next we're going to do single crochet in 3 stitches. The one after that is you single crochet in 4 stitches and then increase. And this can really go on as long as you need until your circle is as big as the base of your basket. As big as you want your basket to be, I should say, because there is no right or wrong. Again, I did the pattern to make our little basket, but that was really just to introduce to the pattern, and that way you can customize it after this. Alright, so now we're on row 5, so we are single crocheting 3 regular stitches, increase in the 4th stitch. Three regular stitches, increase, 3 regular stitches, increase, 3 regular stitches, increase. There, just have 30 stitches. And don't get too worried if your stitch count is off by just like a few stitches. Might just mean you missed an increase or did an extra increase here or there. As long as, you know, your circle doesn't have any weird like folds in it or isn't like curling, then it is okay. It is a very forgiving if you miss or skip a decrease. Miss or skip is the same. Miss or add a decrease somewhere. Alright, so now we are doing 4 regular single crochet, then increase, 4 regular single crochet, increase in this 5th stitch, 4 regular, increase, right, 36 stitches. Now we are on row 7. So we're single crocheting the next 5 stitches. So I am going to use my stitch marker, and again, when I do the stitch marker, I always do the first stitch of the next row. So this is the first stitch of row 5, and I put my stitch marker in that stitch. And I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 regular single crochet, and then an increase, And you'll notice as you're making your circle, since we increase, you know, kind of a consistent corner 6 times, it is kind of creating like a hexagon shape. That is totally normal, and it will turn more into a circle once we stop increasing. Cool, so I've reached my stitch marker, means end of row 7. If you ever forget what row you're on, you can always count. So each of these little ridges is a row. So it starts with this first circle in the middle, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that means we've completed 7 and we have to start row 8. If you're having trouble like keeping count, sometimes if I'm watching a TV show or chatting as I crochet, I'll start this row and it'll be single crochet 6 and then increase, and I'll forget how to count 6. So one thing that's you can do is if you look at your stitches and you're like, okay, so I have to 6 single crochet, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll pull one of the loops in the single crochet, and that won't impact your project at all, but what it does is it does indicate to me that that's where I have to increase. So then I'm going to do the same thing for these next ones. There's 6 stitches in between each increase. 3, 1, 2, 3. Increase in this one. Turning project. There's 6 regular single crochet. Increase in this one. 6 regular single crochet. Increase in that one, and then I'll be back to where I'm at right now. Yeah. So again, totally optional, but that is, if you have trouble counting or keep losing count, that is kind of an option for you. You can mark them ahead of time and then you don't have to think about it. You can just single crochet, and when you hit one of those loose stitches, you'll know to increase. And as you can see, went through 2, it did not impact the project at all. Loosening that stitch, you just single crochet into it and it tightens right back up, so it didn't leave any gaping holes in my project or anything. Alright, so that is the end of my row 8. You'll see it does look like a little bit of a hexagon, but that will correct itself, don't worry. We end up with 48 stitches. Again, this is where you could continue increasing if you wanted a larger basket. You would do like single crochet in next 7 and then increase, and then after that you would do single crochet 8 and so on, continuing that pattern to make a larger circle. And then you would just resume where we are, which is row 9. So row 9 is where we start to make the walls of our basket, and you'll notice we do slightly different stitch for this. So all this stitch is it's alternating a half double crochet and a slip stitch. This is the first time I tried this stitch pattern, and I really liked it because not only does it look cool, but it also gave a different thickness and like a sturdier basket wall. If we just done single crochet, unless we were using a really small hook, it kind of would have been flimsy. And you can see like it is still flexible. It's a basket, but this stitching really, it doesn't stretch like regular single crochet would. so you're not going to get gaping holes. So it's just a really nice stitch to use for baskets. Alright, so now we are just going to half double crochet and slip stitch. We're going to alternate those two stitches pretty much all the way around until our walls of our basket are as big as we want. On the pattern, I have you do it until row 16 to get around a 3-inch height, but again, you can go on or not as long as you would like. As a reminder, so half double crochet, get my focus here, half double crochet is you yarn over, you go into the stitch, yarn over, you pull through the stitch. So you have 3 on your hook, you yarn over and you pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And then slip stitch is I'm going to go into the stitch, yarn over, and I'm pulling through. I have 2 loops on my hook, but I don't yarn over again. I just pull that top loop through the bottom loop. Again, half double, so I'm going to yarn over, and going into the stitch, yarn over, pull through the stitch, yarn over, pull through all 3 on my hook. Slip stitch, going into the stitch, and I'm yarning over, I'm taking that yarn and I'm just pulling it all the way through. It is going to feel a little different. Half double crochet is a stitch that has a little bit of a height to it. Not quite as much as double crochet, but a little bit more height than single crochet. And then slip stitch is a very, very short stitch. It has no height to it whatsoever. So you're kind of going up and down, and you'll see it kind of creates like an up and down ridge. But it definitely does change how our project feels, and it's going to make a really nice wall for your basket. You might notice that just with the change in stitching, especially that slip stitch is a very tight stitch, so it is causing it to already start to curl into a basket. You'll notice too, so when you finish your first row of this stitch and you're going around the second time, your slip stitches are going to be a lot tighter than normal, and that's just the nature of the slip stitch. So don't worry, it's totally normal. Might just have to fight to get your hook into it a little bit more, but it's all good. lost my loop there. And when you're going around, so when you're going around the second round, don't worry about, you know, doing slip stitches in the slip stitches of the previous row or half double on top of the half double from the previous row. I just went around and it still made a really cool pattern. And if you miss a stitch here and there and, you know, do 2 half double and then 2 slip stitch, it is pretty forgiving if you do that here and there, obviously not the whole time, but it does hide it pretty well, so don't worry about getting every stitch perfect. Alright, so you'll see it is starting to curl up. At this point it could be just like a mini tray. It's starting with a different pattern on this side, and then the inside you kind of get this loopy pattern. So keep going until row 16 or just until your basket is the height that you want. I'm going to pause the video and I will resume when we are ready to make our handles. Alright, I am back. I'm working on the walls. I did go a little beyond row 16, so this basket's going to be just a little tiny bit bigger than my last one. And you'll see we have this really strong pattern. I really like the stitching. I like how it looks, and I just really like how it's a little bit sturdier than a regular single crochet. So if you're like me and you've just been going around alternating that half double slip stitch and haven't really been counting rows, just been going by how tall we want our basket to be, the one thing before we start our handles is you want to make sure you at least end at the end of a row, that way it's even. And that way you also don't have like one side, you know, that's taller than the other. So how we're going to do that, because once you get to the stitching, it is a little bit harder to count your rows, as I'm sure you've noticed. I'm going to go down to my base here, and I'm just going to check the circle, and I'm going to see where does that second row start. So where does the row end and begin? So it starts here, it goes around, and then here's the point where that second row starts. I'm going to follow this line all the way up. So right about here is where my row begins and ends. So my hook is currently over here, so I'm just going to continue crocheting to this point. I could also put a stitch marker. It might be a little bit easier. I'll stick a stitch marker in that stitch, or just use the where you loosen a loop. You'll notice too, the slip stitches are not only are they tight, they're also very small. They kind of hide. So it's very easy to miss them when you're going around. So I regularly had to count my stitches. There were a few times where I missed a slip stitch and had to take out my work and go back. They are kind of annoying to work with, but they make such a nice stitch pattern. So that's the trade-off, I guess. Alright, so I'm just going to half double in this last stitch here. Now I am ready to make my handles, and this is an optional step. We're just making these mini little handles. They're just kind of cute, I thought, but they are totally optional. You can feel free to, you can either end your basket here, or you can do a row of all slip stitch, and all that does is it just creates a really neat edge around your basket. But I am going to make our handles. So our first handle is going to be right here. We're on row 17. Beginning of row 17, we are going to chain 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is going to feel weird, just like creating a chain in the middle of a project, but it's going to be okay. So we chain 8, and then we're going to skip 3 stitches. So this is the stitch I just went into. So 1, 2, 3. So we're skipping those 3. And I'm going to single crochet in the 4th stitch from my hook. So if my hook is here, 1, 2, 3, 4th stitch from the hook. And that's just a regular single crochet. So now we have like a chain that's going to be the base of our handle. It could also just stay as a chain handle. I'm going to go back over mine in row 18, but we'll get to that in a second. So now we're going to single crochet in the next 20 stitches. This is just regular single crochet. Remember to look out for those really, really tight slip stitches, because they are going to try and hide from you. At this point, if you do skip one, it's not that big of a deal, because we're not going to continue to go up, so it's not like your basket's going to look weird. So we're single crocheting 20, so 1, 16, 17. And really, all you want to make sure is you can fold your basket in half here. You just want to make sure that you are, if you match up where your hook is to where your handle is, you just want to make sure it's roughly even. If you single crochet those 20 stitches, it should be. But obviously, if you went to make a larger base or a smaller base, it's going to be a little bit different because your stitch count is not going to be the same as mine. So again, one way you can make sure it's even is you fold your basket in half, and you just want to match up this stitch to the right side of your handle, because you're going to create the other handle and it's going to go here, going to the left. So that's just how you make sure it's relatively even. And then once it is, we're going to stop here and we are going to chain 8 again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And same thing, we're going to skip 3 stitches. So this is the stitch I just went into. 1, 2, 3. This is the 4th stitch from the hook because the hook is right here. 4th stitch. We're going into this one, and we're just going to do a regular single crochet. And then to finish the row, we are single crocheting in the remaining 20 stitches. Again, if your base is bigger, you'll have more than 20 stitches. If you did a smaller base, then you'll have less than 20 stitches. But that's okay because you're just going to single crochet until you reach your handle again. That first handle that you made. and once we reach this end here, so the stitch count in row 17 says 48 stitches. You still have 48 stitches because we didn't decrease any, and then you don't count the chain stitches, you're just counting the stitches below it. So, in case you got confused by that. So now I am going to do just a row of just slip stitch. I've got my 2 chain handles, but I don't want them to stay chains. I want them to be, you know, have a little more thickness to them. So my first slip stitch is going to be in that chain because we're going to slip stitch, and we are going to slip stitch in these 8 stitches that make up each of our handles. It is going to feel a little weird. Remember, slip stitch is you yarn over and you just pull through the bottom loop. I remember slip stitch because you take the yarn and it just slips right through the stitch. You only yarn over once. You take it and just slips right through. So now I slip stitch in all of my chain, and then I just slip stitch right in the stitch into the single crochet on this side, and it just makes my handle a little thicker. And then the slip stitch for the final row kind of just makes a nice finishing edge. Again, totally optional. You can also just single crochet around if you would like. I personally like the slip stitch. It also makes that last one a little bit tighter, so it kind of just secures, you know, the outer of your basket. Alright, so now we are at our second handle. So we are we are slip stitching in each of those chains. And then back to the regular single crochet stitches. We're going to slip stitch in those all the way to the end. Another thing, oh, my yarn frayed there. One thing I like about slip stitch is it also is very flat. So we're going to slip stitch in a last stitch, and then when we fasten off, we're not going to be left with like a random ridge or a bump where we see where our project left off. Alright, so I'm going to slip stitch all the way up to where our handle starts. And you'll see it is very flat. There is not a ridge where you can tell this is where I ended my project. And so then I'm just going to take my hook out, I'm going to take my scissors, pull it tight, and you can hide your ends on the inside of your basket if you like. I'm just going to weave mine in a little bit. And then they can hang out inside your basket, but I am going to cut mine. And that is our crochet basket. Again, this is like a nice little desktop basket, but you can alter the pattern to make it bigger or smaller. I also have seen you can use it as a ring tray. If you make really short walls, they can be a nice like ring or jewelry tray. You can do it without handles or with handles. But yeah, that is our basket for our August crochet series. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in person in our crochet classes. Thank you.